It's a great honor to be invited to address this meeting, and I know that in this room there are a lot of people, everybody here, I'm in the company of people who have spent their life in struggle and who are committed to this movement as I am. I believe that the CAW-CEP process must lead to a very different kind of union, or the downward spiral of the labor movement is going to accelerate. So I think the future of the labor movement depends on this process coming up with something profoundly different. Then an essential step in rebuilding the power of our movement is dramatically improving our ability to plan and wage effective campaigns. The corporations and the politicians that are ruining people's lives should be the target of bold, ambitious, and relentless campaigns on the ground. Such campaigns will simply not happen on the necessary scale unless there are profound changes within our unions. We say shift leadership, attention, and union resources. Less preoccupation with the familiar day-to-day maintenance functions of our unions, and more focus and commitment to meeting the attack. Political action committees and activists alone cannot meet the challenge. Let's not spend the next 5 years rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. Most unions, in my opinion, have the politics and the priorities suited to the post-war social contract. Reformers, Bernard Shaw said, have the idea that change can be achieved by brute sanity. We greatly overestimate the usefulness of our powers of persuasion. Our politics, our view of power, I believe, is outdated. We are still invoking the terms of a class truce that no longer exists. The truce is over. I'm going to advance a few ideas that I hope will spark discussion. I will start by saying that social unionism has serious shortcomings as a model for union renewal. I recognize that great campaigns have been waged and important victories have been won under the banner of social unionism. I was, however, among those in CUPE in the late 1980s who were critical of social unionism from the start because it offered no critique of the status quo within our unions. Social unionism was an add-on that diverted the forces for change into a parallel universe, an activist milieu on the fringes of the union. It also contributed to a shift in focus away from the workplace and the membership. A few words about labor relations. Neoliberal labor relations must be identified as a threat and must be resisted if labor renewal is to succeed. Any meaningful discussion of union culture must address a powerful corporate reculturing campaign that is designed to blur the line between union and management, encourage us to find comfort in our relationships with our oppressors, engage us in co-management, consult us to death, draw us away from our members, and rob us of our power. The corporate campaign is carried out, often under the radar, with the guidance of the biggest and slickest consulting firms in the world. In my view, a clear break with neoliberal labor relations is an essential step in rebuilding our power. I'm going to say just a few words about equity. At one time, CUPE Local 1 that I come out of forced Toronto Hydro to change its hiring practices and hire non-whites. The minute the local leadership lost its equity focus, Hydro management went back to their racist, sexist ways. The new crop of apprentices, the current crop of apprentices at Toronto Hydro is 100 white men. The union let the employer get away with this. In a city that will soon be 50% people of color, such unions will be viewed as organizations of privilege, not organizations of social justice. I believe that every union has to reflect on this question very deeply. I'm now going to a union renewal PowerPoint that I've used mostly at the local level. The exercise is not neutral. It makes a case. It makes the case that a union's relationship with the employer defines in fundamental ways its politics, its culture, its relationship with its members, and its willingness and ability to challenge power in society. The exercise starts off with mapping the employer and the union on a large sheet of paper. Then the union organization is brought into the exercise. The union organization includes the local executive board, the union stewards, committee members, and in many cases, the union servicing representative. And I asked participants, in a perfect world, where would you put the union organization on the page? After discussion, I tell participants, for the purposes of exploring the union's relationships, I will place the union halfway between the members and the employer. I then ask participants to make a list of the interactions between the union organization and the employer. They have no problem making long lists, meetings of every imaginable kind, committees, subcommittees, grievances, correspondence, collective bargaining. An incredible list. These arrows, solid two-way arrows, represent the interactions between the union and the employer. Frequent, two-way, and often person-to-person. I then ask participants to make a list of the interactions between the union organization and a typical union member, not the member who's always in deep doo-doo. Although I have encountered exceptions, in most locals, interactions with members are hit and miss, one way, and usually not face-to-face. Bulletin boards, emails, etc. The single dotted line represents the union's interactions with union members. So it's infrequent, it's sporadic, and it's mostly one way. Many local leaders report that they are so busy dealing with the employer, they have little time to meet with members face-to-face in the workplace. Local leaders often end up in a bubble with the employer. Even when they're accomplishing something, the members rarely know that they are making the effort. These two parallel lines represent a disconnect which can develop between the union organization and union members. Of course, there must be a lot of interaction between the union and the employer, but local leaders report they are spending more and more time in the bubble and are accomplishing less and less. The vast majority of union attention and resources is consumed in the bubble, plus, of course, internal union administration. Only a small proportion is committed to mounting campaigns to meet the attack. I don't even know if it's 5%. I think that the diagram also describes the focus of some senior labor bodies, which will remain nameless. So where would social unionism be? With all respect, I think a lot of it would be in the margins in many cases. While local leaders are stuck in the bubble, employers bypass the union and pour resources into initiatives which deal directly with union members. Good cop tactics are used to foster trust with the employer, and bad cop tactics are used to intimidate union members. As I noted earlier, there is also a battle for the hearts and minds of union leaders. In many cases, neoliberal labor relations initiatives are not clearly named and challenged by unions. Meanwhile, we're facing the most aggressive attacks in living memory. These bold red arrows on the right represent those attacks. I believe that every union must ask itself, to what extent are we cut off from our power, our members? Are we being outflanked? Are we really making the best use of our resources? To what extent have we slid into neoliberal labor relations? What must we change within our union so that we can take the actions needed to turn the tide? We need rigorous planning in our unions of a kind that most unions don't do. A rigorous participatory planning cycle at all levels, a constant practice of planning, acting, and evaluating. We need to break the information bubble. We need to get out of the bubble with the employer. We need to establish a healthy boundary between the union and the employer. We need to challenge employer reculturing. We need to overcome the disconnect with union members, and build a workplace organization. We need to strengthen the ties with allies, reach into the community through union members, and get into campaign mode in a way that we've never done before. There it is. Thank you very much. I look forward to talking with you further.